Hello, Troy A. Shadowing Tronics, back in the Art Soundoff challenge. Was hoping to be back yesterday, but the nice cough back. Um, and the phone needed recharging, so I couldn't do it yesterday. And I can see the pictures already starting to glitch, so everything's here. The glitching picture, the coughing, it's all here. Just in case you missed any of it. I know I did. So before I talk about this subject, let me talk about the show Bluey. This will make sense in a moment. I promise you. Now, Bluey, of course, is a preschool show from Australia about anthropomorphic dogs, focusing on the main character and her family and her friends as they play and have adventures and go through life and all that good stuff. There's an episode called Shadowlands, where we see them play a few different games, and one of them is the title game, Shadowlands. The rule of the game is pretty simple. Simple. Doesn't really matter to the story, but I'll tell it to you in case you want to play with your kids someday. Basically, they were in a park, and anything that's shadow, shadow of a tree, shadow of a car, shadow of a person, uh, just the clouds, all that area is land. Everything that's light, that with lights touching, that's water, and the crocodile will eat you if you step on that area. So the point of the game is to get from point A to point B, only crossing the shadows, not crossing the light unless there's enough space that you can jump over the light. Now you're jumping over the croc. But if you have to walk into it, you lose the game. That's the rule. One of Bluey's friends, Coco, is not very good at playing by the rules. She always tries to make the game easier. We see a game that they're playing earlier where she tries to make the game easy for herself. And Bluey calls her out on this. And during the game itself, she keeps trying to Coco keeps trying to change the rules to make the game easier, especially when the mothers bring out the cupcakes, and the kids want to go have the cupcakes, but they gotta wait until there's a shadow they can cross to get to where the picnic area is. And throughout the episode, Coco's going trying to change the rules and was like, "You can't change the rules because they're the rules." And this is not a thing. Even Bluey ends up admitting this is not a good enough answer. But during the course of the game, um, Coco comes up with the answer. Why don't you change? Can't you change the rules? Because the rules make it fun. Now, how does that go into storytelling? Because I've been getting some of the art stuff done, talked about medical health a bit. I haven't done my usual storytelling side of things because I am coming into this more as to a writer than I am an artist. That's why my art skills need a lot of catching up. My focus throughout my life has been writing the story. I write comics because they're more fun to write, but at the same time, I pretty much do everything in the form of comic. Even my script is a comic form, so I rather than just regular script. So I think more about writing than I do art. Now here's why this is important. You can make the silliest rules you want in your world. You can make a world where Shadowlands is actually life, where there's actually areas that you can't cross. Sometimes those areas are crossable. Call it the tides or something. You can have strange rules. It doesn't have to be the real world. In fact, I can't think whether you can actually tell a proper superhero story unless you get away from the real world. But the factor is, no matter how strange your world is, they need to abide by a set of rules, and you, as the writer, need to abide by that set of rules. Now, why is that? Because the rules make it fun. It makes it fun for the reader, and if you're doing it right, it makes it fun for the writer too. Instead of seeing the rules as an obstacle, see it as a challenge. Create rules that will allow the story to flow, will be really cool, but will also challenge you a bit. I'm starting to notice in Looney Tunes, why is Bugs Bunny so afraid of getting shot? Elmer Fudd, Daffy Duck, Yosemite Sam, Wile E. Coyote, they're getting shot and blown up all the time, and they just shake it off. At best, it's an annoyance. Now you go to Bugs, and he's still treating it like it's life and death. That's something I've only realized doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But whatever. The point is, by the rules of this thing, as much as that doesn't make sense, somehow for Bugs it's more dangerous than it is for these guys. Why? I don't know. I'm gonna push Art Soundoff limits here a bit by bringing up Rings of Power, because I don't follow Tolkien, so I don't know what rules are being violated, what character personalities or anything are being violated. I don't know. I don't follow Tolkien. I watched the Hobbit cartoon from Rankin Bass as a kid. I think tried watching their Lord of the Rings or Return of the King, one of them, and didn't get into it. I didn't like Bakshi's version at all because I'm not usually a fan of Bakshi's work. There were parts that I liked about his Mighty Mouse cartoon, with only parts. So I'm not gonna sit here and rank on Amazon or anything else, but I listened to the people who were complaining about Rings of Power and why they have a problem with it. And it's basically that the show is violating the rules that Tolkien set up. Tolkien worked hard to set up the magic system, the lore, the history, the personalities. He was very big in coming up with that kind of stuff. He loved language, so he created his own language for the thing. And this stuff mattered because he set the rules. And the reason that the fans got into these stories is because those rules will make it fun. It's what made it interesting. What helped them get attached to these characters, to the lore of Middle Earth, the stories and concept of Middle Earth. And Rings of Power, from what I'm hearing, violates so many of these rules, gets characters wrong, gets lore wrong, in order to do, you may even appreciate, be proud, happy for some of the things you do. I'm not going to get into that. This is Art Soundoff. But the argument is that they are violating the rules. And thus, the only ones having fun are the people breaking the rules. For the people who are invested in the world, invested in the rules, it's not fun for them, so they're getting upset. And then they're being told things that isn't accurate, but I'm not going to get into that. Point is, this is the argument that I'm hearing from a lot of people of numerous races and genders, that the rules are being violated. And then I'm hearing all these writers talking about how, to them, the rules are an obstacle. It's not an obstacle. It's a challenge. It's what you tell a story. It's what draws the people in. It's like continuity. This is what creates the world that drew these people in. And this is why these people are fans of these works, why people are fans of these characters. Because the creators before them, set ground rules for how these characters are, how their world works, and that's how people got invested. It stuck true to its rules. And you can do some crazy things. That's what I love about kids shows. They play so much liberty with reality is not like superheroes. Play a lot of reality. Superman cannot exist by the laws of science in the real world, but he can exist in fiction. Well, that's why Superman being grounded in reality makes no sense to me. At the same time, if you're doing a story about 1940s gangsters and you're trying to make it as accurate to those days, to the days of Al Capone, suddenly dropping vampires and ninjas into the story is going to make no bloody sense. Now, you can do a story with gangsters and ninjas and vampires somehow, but if you're in the third act and suddenly a vampire attacks Al Capone and vampires come in after the St. Valentine Massacre and have a feast, that makes no bloody sense. If it violates everything that was set up before, it might be funny. It might be an interesting thing to see 40s gangsters arming their Tommy guns with silver bullets to take on werewolves. I almost said vampires, but that's not what takes out vampires. Although if we're violating rules, what the hell? Right? Apparently we don't care anymore. But if you're creating the rules that this is based on regular 1940s, even if all your characters are talking cats. Look for the webcomic Lackadaisy sometimes. It's interesting. But if they suddenly drop, if you're talking cats, then fine, your world is talking cats. But if you're based on 1940s gangster stories, and what was going on around the time of Prohibition, you don't break out the vampires unless you were trying to do a story of gangsters versus vampires, which could be interesting. But if that's not what you set up, suddenly throwing vampires in out of nowhere breaks the rules and it breaks your world. And if you break your world, people stop being interested in it because they can no longer connect with it. It doesn't have to reflect the real world. It just has to reflect itself. You set your rules, you tell your story because it's the rules that make it fun. So take advice from a 5-6-year-old pink poodle, I guess. But so a little something to think about. Like you can be crazy, but if you're consistent within the rules, if somebody can fall 10 feet and not get hurt, they ought better be the rules of that world, or that character has some kind of superpowers or a parachute or something. It needs to make sense by the rules you set up. You can set whatever rules you want. Just make sure you follow your own rules. You break your own rules, you break your world. So, what can I do for shout out? Well, I mean, everybody already knows. So when I talk about writing, let's do an art shout out. And everybody knows Jazza already. So me pointing you to Jazza's channel is probably a waste of some people's time. But he started another project. I haven't really looked at it yet, but it sounds fascinating. I think he's got a few videos up there now. Right now, it doesn't have a name. It just says insert name here or something like that. He was actually looking for suggestions. I suggested the name artistic. What was it? Shoot, the opposite of. I looked up in his video talking about it. He's talked about being artistically selfish. So I suggested something that was the opposite of selfish. It was artistic. Artistic philanthropy. That was the name I suggested. So push that one. Maybe he'll use that one. Artistic philanthropy sounds good. But right now it's just called insert name here or something like that. And he's got a few artists on there, and it's him collaborating with other artists. Artists who maybe are not as well known. So he's giving a signal boost to these other artists who could someday go on to be great. Even if they don't have their own YouTube channel or stuff, they could make some really great stuff. And I like the fact that he's trying to promote these other creators. So I'll put the link. We don't know how long the name will stick, so I don't know how long the link works. I don't know how that all works. But there's your card, and or something like that up here, I think. Maybe up there. Depends how this mirrors up when we put it out. But check it out, and if you live in the Australian area, see if somewhere in Australia you can get up to his studio or get him to visit your studio. However he does it, I don't know. But I'll give it a try. Why not? So that's it for today. For me, if you want to find out what Art Soundoff is, check out artsoundoff.com. If you want to find out what I is, check out bwspotlight.com. So hopefully I'll be back tomorrow with another Art Soundoff as we continue through November. Hopefully my coughing bits are all done and I don't have any more technical issues, although we all know that happens with every Art Soundoff. But until whenever I get to do this again, I wish you all happy creating.